Good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Prochazka, and I'm the Executive Director for the Electrification Coalition. If you aren't familiar, you can find us at electrificationcoalition.org. A lot of great information and background on case studies and the work that we do across the country. I'm very excited to be here today to introduce a new analysis that was conducted by Atlas Public Policy, who is a leading public policy institution that focuses on transportation electrification across the country and has a real library of resources that you can find online at their website. I'll introduce the speakers from Atlas shortly, but today's analysis is focused on the opportunity to electrify our federal fleet. It was supported and engaged with a number of partners, including UCS and Consumer Reports. And ultimately, it's at a critical time when transportation electrification is at the top of mind for the consumer, is at the top of mind for policymakers, and all the way up to the Biden administration, who at this point has put a lot of emphasis on recognizing the future of transportation is almost certainly electric, and it is a question not of if, but of when. And in order for the U.S. to maintain its standing leadership and longstanding leadership within the U.S. automotive industry, we need to work very quickly to electrify our transportation sector. And the federal fleet provides a unique and important opportunity as one of the largest fleets in the country to help prioritize the market and encourage transportation electrification to happen much more quickly. It's a critical step in terms of electrifying our transportation sector to reduce our oil dependency, to reduce the harmful emissions that are often disproportionately impacting communities of color and low-income neighborhoods. It also is critical to reduce the GHG emissions in transport, which at this point have become the single largest contributor to global or global climate change. And so it is an important opportunity for us to reduce those emissions and think about reducing or transitioning the fleet quickly. Fleets represent a near-term opportunity, and we'll share some of these things in the report because they maximize the benefits of electrification. So centralized parking, they have established routes or routes that are in operational duty cycles. They can help reduce maintenance costs, and a big emphasis of this report is going to be focused around the TCO, so the total cost of operation, and how by transitioning the federal fleet, we can actually save taxpayers a significant amount of money over time and help create market certainty because fleets have a continuous replacement cycle, and a great way for us to not only walk the walk, but talk the walk. To date, cities have really been leading the charge on these issues, as have states. And so fleet transition is something that there's a lot of leadership that already exists. And now it is a great opportunity for the federal government to show that same and demonstrate that same leadership. And fortunately, the Biden administration, through an executive order, has already said this is something we need to prioritize and need to focus on. And obviously now we have an opportunity through this analysis to show how this transition will meet a bunch of other goals. It matches federal ambition. It impacts medium duty, light duty, heavy duty, and buses. And again, as I said, it is no longer a question of if, it is a question of when. And so in this case, when we go through this, I will introduce Nick Nigro from Atlas Public Policy, James DiFilippo. But before we get to that, I'm very excited to introduce Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur. She is with Ohio's 9th Congressional District and has been a co-chair for the Auto Caucus historically. And so there's no better person to talk about the opportunities that exist in the U.S. to maintain our leadership role in the automotive sector as we move to an electrified transportation future. So thank you so much for finding time for us this morning, Congresswoman. And with that, I'd love for you to offer a few remarks as we lead into this analysis.
Thank you, Ben, very much for this opportunity. And I want to thank the Electrification Coalition and Atlas Public Policy for focusing on this really critical sector of our economy. As you mentioned, I'm co-chair of the House Auto Caucus, and one of our primary responsibilities is to focus on the American automotive industry and to support the nearly 900,000, almost a million men and women who manufacture our vehicles, and millions more who work in all of the supplier chains. I experienced that directly in my district. Among others, I represent General Motors' most highly regarded transmission facility. Of course, it's at risk with the change to electric vehicles from conventional, and we have to think about retraining and reemployment of the workforce. We also have the Jeep platform here, Jeep Wrangler, the largest on the continent. So Stellantis exists here, Ford, EcoBoost engine over in the eastern end of our district. And my point is that this is a heavy industrial region of America, and we will feel directly the changes that the industry is evolving as we speak. So in this 21st century, we have to adapt, we have to invest and to promote these new vehicles that our world needs, but we also have to remember the people who do the work. Just to give you one statistic, and I'm working on an amendment dealing with the workers, the mechanics, and those who will have to build as well as maintain vehicles. Right now in our country, we have a shortage of nearly 250,000 mechanics of conventional vehicles. With electric vehicles, there are new skills that are needed because you're dealing with batteries and electrification in a way that we haven't before. And so we can't forget the people who do this work, including at our bus companies, including at the Postal Service. And I want to say a word more about that right now. Our government at the federal level, their non-military fleet consists of over 400,000 vehicles. Think about that one for a moment. And the 225,000 of those are operated, nearly half, by the Postal Service. And the vast majority of those vehicles are powered by either gasoline or diesel. So we know we have to change. In fiscal year 2020, the federal government's non-military gas and diesel-powered vehicles consumed more than 300 million gallons of fuel at a cost of more than $600 million. And 75% of that came from the Postal Service. Literally, the postal letter carriers take a card, they drive out of the Postal Service garage, and they go to any gas pump. That's not exactly the cheapest way to buy in any case, but it also tells you the way it currently functions. So it's time for the Postal Service to be the lead agency to electrify its fleet. And I've been part of a coalition demanding answers why the Postal Service has awarded this contract to Oshkosh over Workhorse, especially since Oshkosh has never made an electric vehicle. And I think it's really important for the Postal Service itself, the people driving these vehicles every day, to help design them. And we know that we have to have electrified vehicles. We know we have to have charging stations. And one of my colleagues in the House, Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence of Detroit, Michigan, in Southfield, Michigan, said, you know, Marcy, some of the first places we should put chargers are on federal properties, like at post offices. I thought, that's a really good idea, because we already own the property. The Postal Service has these vehicles, and we could make them available to the public as well. So it's just something to think about. With the infrastructure legislation making its way through Congress, Democrats and President Biden are looking to invest $7.5 billion in building out the first ever national network of EV chargers. And as I've said, some of our post office properties are very properly located for that. This will allow for the U.S. Postal Service and the entire federal fleet to operate all around our country. And the efforts that the Postal Service undertakes to electrify its fleet will lead to broader adoption across the federal government, as well as state and local governments and the general public. Just think about if we were to add the Department of Defense to this mix. And I've talked to them many times as a member of the Defense Subcommittee of Appropriations about being a leader in electric vehicles when they do their big air shows and so forth. They could have solar-powered vehicles, hydrogen-powered vehicles, electric-powered vehicles. They could all be out there. They could be showcasing the future. By investing in these vehicles of the future, we'll help rebuild our economy, support the hardworking men and women in the auto industry with good-paying jobs, and combat the crisis of climate change. I was a little bit late getting on simply because it's raining again in Ohio, and we certainly have had record levels of rainfall. So all of us, and I want to thank you for your leadership in this, because we all have to do everything we can to sustain life on Earth. And one of the steps we have to take in order to accomplish this is to transition away from fossil fuel, guzzling and polluting vehicles and take on the future with electric. So thank you to the Electrification Coalition and Atlas Public Policy for your work and for putting together this compelling analysis. Now it's time to do the work and make the vehicles. I'll turn it back over to Ben.
Well, excellent, Congresswoman Kaptur. We are so appreciative of your leadership and your co-chairship of the House Auto Caucus. If you have one moment, I'd love to ask a question before you depart.
Okay.
At this point in Congress, what are some of the key opportunities that constituents across the country could be thinking about to help support efforts to transition to an electrified transportation future?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the most important things I think they can do is meet with their local auto dealers first. You would be surprised at what you will learn. I think also to work with the Automotive Society of Engineering across our country, ASE, which is based, I think it's based in Greater Washington now, but it used to be in Pennsylvania. That's the Automotive Society of mechanics that work on cars all over the country. To pull that coalition together, because right now dealers don't have enough mechanics to repair vehicles, and it's a worry. It's a big worry, and I think we need a section. In fact, I drafted one last night. I put $100 million in it. That may not be enough to create this retraining program for individuals and training program to bring new people into this industry. So there's a real job opportunity here if we focus on it. And people talk about the cars, but they don't talk about the people who will have to run them and repair them and so forth. So, and the systems required and the tools required to do all of this. So I think we need to think hard about that. I think we need to organize working with our mayors for the public fleets and our bus companies, our transit companies across the country. If you think about it, many of our bus companies use conventional diesel powered buses, particularly in the older cities where they couldn't afford to transition to something else, hydrogen or whatever. And electric is coming on new. So you've got all these old antiquated systems sitting out there. I think we need a training program for our public workers. There are thousands of them across this country. And I'm not sure the mayors and the county commissioners are really focused on vehicles yet, but they could be. So I think working with the private sector, I think working with the mayors and with those who handle public fleets, our transit authorities, these could be strong voices for electric vehicles. I don't know why they're getting lost in the mix, but I think that those are really important voices that are effective at the federal level. And so that would be something people can do regionally. They don't just have to work nationally, they can work regionally to help you build your coalition. I think also the dealerships obviously are selling electric vehicles. So I think showcasing electric is quite important. I have a friend, he works at a university. He took several batteries and put them in the back of his truck. He converted his engine. He's a professor of, mechanical engineering, so he can do these things. And then he drives it home at night, and then he takes it to work in the morning. And this happens all the time. So I think we need to put those kinds of faces in the news, in the newspapers, on the media, locally. Make a big deal of it. Have it, we have all these homecoming parades and so forth. Let them lead the parades. These are things people can do in their own communities, and that they can help people to see. I know one person's, in fact, the Secretary Granholm, the Secretary of Energy, said to me, boy, is it great not to have to go to a gas station. I just take my car and I plug it in at night, and then I drive it to work in the morning. I mean, those kinds of testimonials locally could mean a lot.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you need to run. So once again, we really appreciate your leadership. I think your discussion about normalizing transportation electrification is something that by transitioning the federal fleet, we can really walk the walk and talk the talk. And I'd love to have every federal employee who drives a federal vehicle say they don't have to go to the gas station, and instead they arrive at their car and it's full of energy for the day. So thank you so much again for your time. And we look forward to working with you more on this effort to electrify our transportation future, and especially the federal fleet.
All right. Thank you so much, Ben. Onward, America.
Thank you.